2020 the deadliest year in U.S. history. Passings are required to top 3 million unexpectedly, fundamentally due to the COVID pandemic. New York, AP, this is the deadliest year in U.S. history, with passings expected to top 3 million unexpectedly, due fundamentally to the COVID pandemic. Last mortality information during the current year won't be accessible for quite a long time. In any case, primer numbers propose that the United States is on target to see more than 3.2 million passings this year, or if nothing else 400,000 more than in 2019. U.S. passings increment most years, so some yearly ascent in fatalities is normal. However, the 2020 numbers add up to a bounce of about 15%, and could go higher once all the passings from this month are tallied. That would stamp the biggest single-year rate jump since 1918, when a huge number of U.S. fighters died in World War I and a huge number of Americans passed on in an influenza pandemic. Passings rose 46% that year, contrasted in 1917. Coronavirus has murdered in excess of 318,000 Americans and checking. Before it tagged along, there was motivation to be cheerful about U.S. passing patterns. The country's general death rate fell somewhat in 2019, because of decreases in coronary illness and malignancy passings. What's more, future crawled up, by a little while, for the second consecutive year. As indicated by death authentication information delivered Tuesday by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC checked 2,854,838 U.S. passings a year ago, or almost 16,000 more than 2018. That is genuinely uplifting news. Deaths normally ascend by around 20,000 to 50,000 every year. Essentially because of the country's maturing and developing populace. Without a doubt, the age-change demise rate dropped about 1% in 2019. And future rose by around a month and a half to 78.8 years, the CDC announced. It was really a very decent year for mortality, as things go, said Anderson, who manages CDC passing measurements. The U.S. COVID pandemic has been a major driver of passings this year, both straightforwardly and in a roundabout way. The infection was first recognized in China a year ago, and the principal U.S. cases were accounted for this year. Yet, it has become the third driving reason for death, behind just coronary illness and malignant growth. For specific periods this year, COVID-19 was the No. 1 executioner. Be that as it may, some different sorts of passings likewise have expanded. An explosion of pneumonia cases early this year may have been COVID-19 passings that essentially weren't perceived as such right off the bat in the scourge. Huge numbers of those, as well, might be identified with COVID. The infection might have debilitated patients previously battling with those conditions, or might have reduced the consideration they were getting, he said. From the get-go in the scourge, some were hopeful that passings would drop as individuals quit driving or heading to get-togethers. Information on that isn't yet in, yet recounted reports propose there was no such decrease. Self-destruction passings dropped in 2019 contrasted in 2018. However, early data proposes they have not kept on dropping this year, Anderson and others said. Medication overdose passings, in the interim, deteriorated. Before the COVID even showed up, the U.S. was amidst the deadliest medication overdose pestilence in its set of experiences. Information for all of 2020 isn't yet accessible. Be that as it may, a week ago the CDC revealed in excess of 81,000 medication overdose passings in the year finishing off with May. Making it the most elevated number ever recorded in a one-year time frame. Specialists figure the pandemic's interruption to in-person treatment and recuperation administrations may have been a factor. Individuals likewise are bound to be ingesting medications alone, without the advantage of a companion or relative who can call 911 or manage overdose turning around medicine. Be that as it may, maybe a greater factor are simply the medications. COVID-19 messed supply up for sellers. So they are progressively blending modest and dangerous fentanyl into heroin, cocaine and methamphetamine, specialists said. Please comment below how you have been surviving coronavirus. Remember social distancing. Wash hand regularly in warm water and soap. Thanks to our frontline worker. Thanks to our doctors. See you next time. Some information found at the AP and the HuffPost.